Hi everyone, welcome to this week's video. This week we're going to be having a look at a few jobs in the greenhouse and outside in the garden to get things ready for spring. We've had another really cold week, but I'm hoping that's the last one. The long range forecast is now looking milder, which is great. We can hopefully get more things planted out and we can get some more seeds coming on. One of the first things we're going to have a look at today is my sweet peas, and they have been sown in early February and germinated and turned into little seedlings. But because we've had periods of cold weather where it has been several degrees below freezing, I decided that I would take them inside overnight and then put them back outside in the light in the daytime. But because we haven't had the higher light levels and the clocks have only just gone forward last weekend, that means that being indoors overnight, they've tended to get a little bit leggy. But they've survived. And the reason that I did do this and take them inside to protect them from those very cold temperatures is because I lost all of my sweet peas for the first time ever back in December with the very cold temperatures then. Normally sweet peas are pretty robust, but this winter has just been too much for them. So I haven't got as many plants as I normally would have, and I'm really conscious that I want these ones to do well that I have started off now. So we're going to look at something today that you can do to your sweet peas if they're starting to look for the light, get a little bit leggy, stretch out. You can pinch them back to make bushier plants, and then you can get the bonus, which especially this year is great for me, is that those bits that you've pinched off create cuttings which you can then grow on to create new plants. Normally it's really easy to sow sweet peas from seed and they germinate fairly quickly and you get large volumes that you can overwinter. But this year, having lost all those ones in December, I'm on the back foot now and don't have as many as I normally would do. So using these cuttings at this stage is really useful for me. So I can keep sowing them, but I will get double the number of plants by using the cuttings as well. So let's go and have a look-see. So over here we've got my sweet peas, and this was a batch that I started off on the 1st of February. And that is very early. I wouldn't be starting off other seeds at that time of year, but I do like to get some sweet peas going. But what can tend to happen when you sow early on is that the light levels are not great. So you start to get your sweet peas doing this, which is reaching up to the sky for as extra light that they can find, and they start to get a bit leggy. Some of them do okay. This one down here is obviously found the light a bit more and it is looking really nice and bushy. But other ones like this, they need a little bit of TLC just now and a bit of rescuing. And don't worry if your sweet peas do look like this, because giving them a good pinch back, they will soon start to create side branches from lower down and they will turn into sturdy little plants for you. So what are you going to need for pinching out these sweet peas? Well, you might just need to use your fingers. It's very easy to pinch off sweet peas with your fingers. All you need to do is you need to count up a couple of pairs of true leaves and have a look where some side shoots are coming out. So for example, this one here, it's got one pair of leaves there, one pair of leaves there. So a good place to pinch would be just above that second set of leaves, just there. And you could do that with your finger. And then you can see down here at the bottom, there's little bits where it's going to start branching out, and that will create a bushier plant. If you don't want to use your fingers, you can use a pair of snips, and that's absolutely fine as well. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to take these top sections of the plants off and use them for cuttings. So you'll need a few things for that if you want to try it. So over here I have got a mixture of seed compost and some vermiculite mixed in just to help with drainage. And I have just given that a water and let it soak in to make it a little bit damp. Not running with water, but just damp. And then over here I've got some root hormone powder. You don't have to use this, but it just helps give them a head start on rooting. I've got a watering can just to give the little cuttings a little water when we've finished. And this jar of water over here is just in case I get distracted. If somebody comes to deliver something at the door and I'm in the middle of this and I've already taken a cutting, I can just pop the cutting in there to keep it moist until I'm ready to plant it. Because as soon as you cut it, they're starting to lose water and then they won't be able to take as cuttings. You want to keep them nice and moist. So let's go and have a look at see if we can pinch off some of these sweet peas. So I'm going to just take a first one here and I'll do this one with my fingers. So count up, one pair of leaves, two pairs of leaves, and then just take your fingers and pinch above there, and that's it gone. And then I've got a little cutting there. Now that one's not a terribly long cutting, but we can still do something with it. So here I have got some pots. These are 3-inch pots that I'm using, And I'm just gonna fill my pot up with some compost there. So this is nice and damp, got some vermiculite in it for drainage. And I've just put some of my rooting hormone out here on the side. If I was to dip my cutting directly into the rooting hormone over here, then you're liable to mess the rooting hormone up because you'll be contaminating it by dipping in a wet stem of seedling. So it's easier just to pour a little bit out at the side here and you can dip your cuttings into that. The next thing you're going to need is you are going to need a pencil, or you are going to need a barbecue skewer. So I'm just going to make a hole with my barbecue skewer. You can use a pencil if you like. And I'm going to make a hole for my cutting just at the edge of the pot, just like that. And then we'll take our cutting that has got its rooting hormone powder on it and we'll just pop it in like that. Use our fingers just to press the compost around it in place, and then we can do another cutting. And I'll fit 6 or 7 cuttings into this pot because not all of them will take, but you're going to hope that a few of them do. And normally you would have 2 to 3 of your sweet pea seeds sown in one pot anyway, because you can plant them out as a little group up their cane. So we'll see how many of them root once we've finished. Let's do another cutting. So we've got another one in this plant pot here. We've already done this one, so we'll do this one. Count up 2 pairs of leaves above there. Then just take our scissors, snip off the top like that. And we've got another cutting. And those plants are starting to look much better than the ones beside them that are very leggy. These ones are looking much better. They'll be sturdier and they'll get growth coming out from the bottom. So here we are. This is one of my sweet pea cuttings that I've just taken. This is quite a big one. This was a really leggy plant. So we're going to have a look at this and how to trim it down and get it ready for putting into your potting compost to grow on some roots, hopefully. So here we go. This is a long cutting and we've got it cut here. That was cut just above where a pair of leaves were. And this is the next pair of leaves up on the stem. Then we've got another pair here, another pair at the top, and then we have got a growing tip where new leaves will come from, and a couple of tendrils as well. Now you don't need all of this on your cutting. You're best to trim it down so that you've got the very bare bones there of your sweet pea stem. You want your sweet pea stem to be focusing not on the leaves and the growth at the top, you want it to be focusing on producing roots at the bottom. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to remove the leaves on these pairs. So you just need to take your snips or your fingers and trim off those leaves. So that's the first one done there. You can see that. And then we're just going to do the same further up. We're going to take our snips and snip that off. So you've trimmed down your stem quite a bit already, but we've still got a bit left at the top. Now I'll probably leave those 2 leaves there, but we don't need that tendril. So I'm going to take the tendril off and the one on this side as well. So up here is where the growing tip is for the new leaves to come. So we want to find that, which is in there, and we want to just pinch that out. Easier to do with your fingers probably. So just take that out there. And that just prevents the sweet pea from putting new growth into the leaves. It will then redirect it down here to the stem. So the final thing that we've got to do here is we don't need this excess stem here. The roots are going to come from just up here if they do. So we can just get rid of that excess stem there and snip it off. And so now that we have it all trimmed, we've not got any excess leaves on it, we've removed the growing tip, we can dip it into our rooting hormone and pop it into our hole we've made in our compost and just gently press around it. So let's go and do that just now. And then we've got a last hole we've made here. This is the very last cutting for today. We'll just pop it in there, gently press around it. So at this stage we can just give our cuttings a very gentle water. You don't want to overdo it, just a little bit, like that. Same here, a little bit of water. And a little bit of water here. Now we want to keep it quite a nice environment for them to take root. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put them on a heated propagating mat, and I'm going to put a humidity dome over the top of them just to keep it nice and humid and to stop the cuttings from drying out. And the heat as well will just encourage rooting too. And we'll check back on them and see if they've taken in a week or two's time. So look at all these cuttings we've managed to get from those sweet pea plants. Definitely worth potting them up if you're pinching out and you need some more plants. In a couple of weeks' time, we'll see how many have taken. And once they've developed good root systems, you can then turn out the pots and separate them out a bit if you want to. You might find only one or two have taken and they can stay in the pots together. But if you're very lucky and the whole lot have taken, then you may need to individually separate them out and pot them on. So that is the sweet pea cuttings under a humidity dome and on a heat mat, and that'll hopefully give them a good environment to get started putting on some roots on those cuttings, and we'll check back and see how they're getting on again soon. So one of the questions that I have got asked in the last couple of weeks is it too late to grow ranunculus and anemones? And that's very much going to depend on where you live. So I normally start my anemone corms and ranunculus corms in the autumn and overwinter them, and then I do another batch in about January time. Now at the moment we're at the very end of March. Is it still worth putting on some ranunculus? Well, this is a bit of an experiment this year for me, because I would say if you haven't done so already and you live in a cooler climate, then yes, maybe it is worthwhile having a go at it. The reason that it might be too late is because ranunculus don't flower well in hot weather. So if you are likely to have very warm summers in June and July, very hot, dry weather, you won't get ranunculus flowering really well. They like cool temperatures. But I live here in Scotland in zone 8B, and the large majority of the time we have fairly cool, mild weather. So for me, I think it is worth putting on some ranunculus if you haven't already done so, because I'm likely to get some good flowers, unless we have a very unusual early summer where we have a really hot, dry spell. But that is unusual. So this year, because I lost all of those overwintered ranunculus and anemones, I didn't have any. And to begin with, I was thinking they're a big investment. I'm not going to bother this year. I'm just going to have a year of ranunculus. But then it got to about February time and I got tempted. I really love ranunculus. I was getting all the catalogues coming in through the post with all these glossy pictures of beautiful ranunculus, and I thought I'll just buy a few and see what happens. So I have started off some. Now I started off some in February, and then I got tempted again and I thought, oh, these are doing so well. They pre-sprouted really quickly. I'm just going to buy a few more. So that shows I'm one of those flower growers that just can't control themselves. I do go and buy things when I've told myself I'm not going to. But anyway, they pre-sprout really quickly at this time of year, so you can get them established really quickly, and I'm going to have lots of new plants. And we'll be able to get them out in the ground soon enough as well, now that the weather is getting milder. Because they don't mind a little bit of coolness. They won't manage very well if we go back into very freezing temperatures, but a little bit of cool weather and they'll be absolutely fine. And they should flower for me in June, early July. So it's a bit of an experiment. We'll wait and see what happens, but my recommendation would be not too late. If you live in a cooler climate like me, it is worth having a go. And I'll have an update for you later this year, and you can see how I've got on with it and see if it was worthwhile. I would say though, the best flowers that you will ever get from your ranunculus are if you've overwintered them, because they put on fabulous roots over the winter time. They are much bigger plants and they'll flower away for you for a longer period of weeks. So ranunculus that are put on at this stage, they will flower, but they won't flower for as long a time period, and you will get less flowers, but they're still beautiful flowers to enjoy. So one of the advantages of doing a late sowing of these ranunculus corms is that they have pre-sprouted really quickly in their trays, just within a couple of weeks, and they're now ready for potting on or planting out. And the decision at this time of year is, what should I do? Because it's now getting to milder temperatures, hopefully won't have too many more frosty nights. Should I plant them directly out into the flower beds, or should I go through the process of potting them on, letting them grow a bit bigger in their pots for a couple of weeks and then plant out? So what I've decided to do is I'm going to split it in half. I'm going to put one of these trays out today into the ground directly, and then I am going to pot up the other tray into individual pots to grow on for a few weeks, and we'll watch them closely and see is there any difference between the two lots of plants. So I've just filled up some 3-inch pots with some compost ready to pop my ranunculus into. So you can get pre-sprouted ranunculus out of their trays really easily. They should just loosen if you just pop your fingers underneath at the bottom of the tray. See all those lovely roots there? Just very gently pull the plant out. And look at that ranunculus there. It's got beautiful long roots on it. Definitely time to come out of the tray and to get potted up or planted out. So we're going to pop that into one of our 3-inch pots over here just now. So I'm just going to pop that into its 3-inch pot there. All the roots going down. Then I'm just going to take some compost and pop it round about the plant, tucking all those lovely roots in, and just gently press down round about. And then these ranunculus will all get a water in a minute, and I'm actually just going to keep them outside in the daytime, outside the greenhouse, so that they can get used to being outside, because they won't be in the greenhouse for as long. I want to get them planted out after a couple of weeks in these pots. So here's another fabulous looking ranunculus, lots of lovely leafy growth and those fabulous roots on the bottom, definitely needing potted up now into its own individual space to grow on for a few weeks. Again, this would do equally as well because it's so late in the season outside just now in the garden. So it's going to be really interesting having a look at the difference between the two ways of growing these on this late in the season. So I'm just going to give these a little water now that they're potted up, and then these are just going to stay outside during the daytime, and I'm going to take them into the greenhouse at night. If there's any particularly bad weather, I'll probably keep them in the greenhouse in the daytime as well, just so they don't get too shocked, but today it's a nice mild day. So underneath these fleece caterpillar tunnels, I have planted some ranunculus out. So that other tray has now gone in the ground in the garden. So here we are, ranunculus planted out in the ground. How is it going to do compared to those ones that are inside in the greenhouse still? We'll check back on these in a couple of weeks and you can see how they're getting on. So the results of me getting tempted in February are lots and lots of ranunculus on the go again, and I'm really happy to see them. I don't think it would be flower farming in the spring and early summertime without ranunculus, so I'm glad I did go for it. Hopefully I'm going to get rewarded with some good flowers later in the year. But I'll let you see. We'll follow along on this ranunculus journey and just see how good they are from a late sowing. So with a little bit of sunshine, things have started to grow a little bit in the greenhouse. Not huge amounts in the last week or two, but a little bit. So let's go and have a look and see what has been happening. So I'm still sowing lots of seeds all the way through March and April. It's a great time to sow all your hardy annual seeds that you're wanting to flower later on in the year. I put some Docus on last week, but if you watched the video that I did last week on Docus, you'll know that it takes a little bit of time for it to germinate. So 1 week would be just too early for me to be expecting to see any germination for my Docus seedlings. But behind the Docus, I have got some Saponaria, and this has germinated very, very quickly within 1 week. And that will be the focus of a future video on my individual flowers, but I'm going to do some more filming as we go along this year so that you can see it in flower as well before I put the video out. So I'm pleased today when I have lifted up the humidity domes here on the heated propagating bench to see that some larkspur have started to germinate. Larkspur can be a little bit of a tricky one. It needs some cold stratification usually to get it going. So I usually put my larkspur seeds in the fridge for a couple of weeks before sowing, which is what I've done here. And these were sown on the 15th of March and today is the 30th of March. So that is just over 2 weeks it's taken these to start germinating. So we've had some very quick germination within a week again for our status. I'm looking forward to doing another video on status as well later in the year. But again, like the saponaria, I'm going to do a bit more filming first so I can show you it in flower this year in the garden as well. But it's great that it's doing so well and that it's germinated too. So that's another one to come off the heated propagating bench and out into the greenhouse. So any seeds that you've got under humidity domes and on a bit of heat, as soon as they germinate, you need to get them off so that they don't get leggy and that they can get into a really good source of light where it's a bit cooler to grow on. Another really good thing is I've got some Orlea that were also sown 2 weeks ago germinating, which is fantastic. Because just like the larkspur, Orlea can be a little bit tricky to get going. You need to have some patience. It won't germinate in a week. It'll take longer than that. So that's great that we're starting to get some just now. And these are from seed that I have collected from my own plants at the end of the season last autumn. Starting to get some little snapdragon seedlings starting here. You can see here that there's individual ones in these front rows, but over here I've obviously got too many. They're absolutely tiny snapdragon seeds to sow, so I've gone a bit wrong there. I managed to get too many in and they've all germinated, so I'll need to separate these out fairly soon so that they can grow on in their own individual cells. I'm sowing some more cornflowers, so these ones are 3 weeks old and starting to show their true leaves as well. 3 weeks on and our salvia seedlings are looking good. These will need potted on soon. You can see the true leaves coming here. That's them just starting. So these oval ones on either side are the seed leaves, the first pair that ever come out. And these are the true leaves of the plant just starting to come. You can see them there and there. So we'll be potting these on into slightly larger individual pots, or you can put them into slightly larger cell spaces in a bigger cell tray, and they'll grow away quite happily in the greenhouse for a few more weeks, developing those true leaves. So these scabious seedlings are what they're looking like 3 weeks on after sowing the seeds. We're not quite got their true leaves yet. We have just starting to maybe see them coming there, but these are just the seed leaves that you can see just now. So this is Ami Magis. This is 3 weeks on after sowing the seeds, and you can see, if you look closely, that we can just start to see the seed leaves coming. Got some Nigella seedlings germinating here in their seed trays. Nigella is a good one for sowing direct outside when it warms up enough, but I like to start some indoors as well. They have quite long roots which don't like disturb too much, so you have to be very gentle when you are teasing them out of their seed trays and potting them on. So now that the weather is getting milder, it's important that you make sure you've got lots of ventilation in your greenhouse. So any side vents, get them open. You can open the doors, and you might be lucky and have automatic vents like I do in the roof of the greenhouse, and that helps as well. You just want to get some cooler air circulating. So I've planted out quite a lot of hardy annuals, things like my cornflowers, my corn cockles. They are all outside in the ground now. I've got a few things left that are just finishing hardening off. So I've got some feverfew here. It's a really great, easy one to grow from seed. So Cynoglossum in the greenhouse is looking good. It needs to get hardened off and planted out as well. These are the next batch of things that are ready to go out in the garden now. My Canterbury bells as well are looking super good. We're going to get them hardened off and planted out in the next couple of weeks. So this is my overwintered Orlea that was sown in August, and it's really starting to get growing now. These need hardened off and put out in the garden as well. But it's nice to see them putting on some growth now that we've got milder weather. So how can you tell when something is ready to plant outside or get potted on again? Well, it's really easy. You just need to pick up your plant pot. This is a blue glitter eryngium, and I sowed this on the 30th of August last year and been overwintering it. And you can just see here that its roots are just starting to come through the pot at the bottom. And that means that I'm either going to need to pot it on into a larger pot inside the greenhouse for a while longer, or start to harden it off and plant it out. And I think that it's doing so well that just 10 days or so of hardening off, and then that can get planted out into the garden. Got lots of lovely grasses growing as well, and these are all ones that I've grown from seed. Fantastically easy to grow grasses from seed, and they provide such good texture in a bouquet when you're making one. They're fantastic. So I'm going to do a video on grasses as well as part of the mini series a little bit later on in the year as well. End of March, and it is definitely muscari time. These ones are all ones that I've grown in the greenhouse, so they come out earlier than the ones in the garden, but are useful if you have any spring weddings, you want to use them in buttonholes, or some spring jar arrangements for the stall. Tulips and pots are starting to look good. They've got lots of growth coming on them. Unfortunately, I think that I've either had a mouse in there nibbling, but I have lost a few, not all of them, but a mouse has definitely nibbled some of the bulbs in some of the pots. But these ones won't be far away from flowering now. So spring in Scotland in zone 8B can be very variable. We can suddenly get some milder days, the sun comes out, it really warms up, the greenhouse really heats up, and you have to open all the vents and get the doors open and things, and the flowers really get on really well in the garden outside. And then at the other extreme, we have the days when it is very, very cold still. You can literally have a few seasons in one day. You can have the sun out, really lovely and hot, next minute the wind's picked up, we've got hail coming down, it's trying to snow, and then the overnight temperatures really dip. So last week we had a milder few days, but then we had a sudden couple of nights where it went really cold. One night was down to -4, which is enough to shock these newly planted out hardy annuals and stunt their growth. So it was time to rescue them with some low caterpillar tunnels. So here's a little bit of footage from last week looking at these caterpillar tunnels, and then a little bit as well about how they're made up. They're really easy to use, really flexible, and I can put them on and off my flowers in the flower patch as the season's weather changes. The temperatures have been really mild for the last week or so, and I've been able to plant out my hardy annuals, but we're dipping down to -4 again overnight this weekend, and then it should come back up again next week, and hopefully that'll be the last really cold spell. But just to be sure to protect those hardy annuals that have gone out, I have put a low tunnel over them in the garden, and these are just plastic hoops that go into the ground, and I've got 30-gram horticultural fleece that goes over the top, and I just weigh the fleece down with stones that I've got in the garden, and this just brings the temperature up underneath the fleece by a couple of degrees and will help those hardy annuals get through. Hardy annuals don't mind a bit of cold, so normally if it was around freezing or 1-2 degrees over, then they would be absolutely fine out in the garden, but -4 is a little bit chilly, so I'm not taking any chances. The covers will come back off again next week when the temperatures overnight rise. So to answer that question at the moment, should I be covering out those hardy annuals that I planted outside? I would say normally, no, you shouldn't need to. They can cope with a little bit of cold, but if you are dipping well below freezing like we are, then yes, I would cover them with horticultural fleece for the few nights that it does dip below freezing. It's been another really, really cold night, -4 degrees overnight, and everything is sitting under a hard frost this morning, but it's a beautiful blue sky morning. And the cornflowers and corncockles look like they've come through all right after that frost as well. So that's great. It was worth putting the cover over them. So these horticultural fleece tunnels just help take the edge off a frost. They should raise the temperature by a couple of degrees underneath and just look after those blooms, like the hyacinths that were already out last week. Protected under the fleece tunnel, you can see that these hyacinths have come to no harm at all with -4 overnight temperatures. So I've got a couple of different things that you can use to make caterpillar tunnels. I have got these flexi pipes here, which are quite long, and you just bend them into the ground in place, and then you can just put your fleece cover over the top of them. They're really easy to use, they're very flexible. These ones are slightly easier to store in that they come apart. They're in 2 sections, and you basically just have a connector here, which I can show you, and you just put that on the 2 ends, and that holds them in place, and then you can just bend the little hoop over your flower bed. So when I want to make my tunnel, I just get my 2 lengths of tube, and I just put the connector on to one end like that, and then you just put the other end of the connector into it like that, and they just slide in and out really easily. And then you end up with your flexible hoop, which you can just put over your flower bed. These have lasted me years and years and years. I think I must have got them about 8 years ago, and because they split apart, they're really easy to store, and they think they came from Gardening Naturally. I think that's where I got them. So here you can see these flexi hoops over some tulips, and I popped them over some tulips that had buds on last week when we had those really freezing overnight temperatures. The tulips that are just a new growth didn't need it, but I thought that the buds could probably benefit from some fleece coverage. So I could just pop out in the evening. I could pop these flexi hoops into the ground, pop some fleece over, and that gave them some protection. So they're really, really good at helping to extend my season and provide a bit of coverage in the spring and the autumn time, and great because I can't have a polytunnel here in a conservation area in the middle of town. So it just gives me that extra protection rather than just growing out in the garden with nothing at all, and I think then that would really limit me. It would mean that I couldn't bring on earlier flowers, and it would mean that at the end of the season things finished far earlier as well. So this is the 30-gram fleece close up, and as you can see here, it's nice and thick. Because it's a 30-gram rather than the 17-gram, it doesn't rip as easily, so it'll last me quite a few seasons. So it's definitely been worthwhile the investment on that, because I did have some of the 17-gram when I very first started flower farming 9 years ago, and it just ripped in the wind, and there's lots of windy nights in early March and April time. So this has been a lot better, and I've got quite a few seasons out of this 30-gram fleece now. Thanks so much for watching this week's video. I hope you enjoyed looking at how I can create some more plants from my sweet pea cuttings, and it's just great to have some Ranunculus growing again as well. Next week we're going to be having a look at another one of my mini series on individual flowers, and that one is going to be all about Phacelia. It's an unusual but great cut flower, and I love using it. Really easy to grow from seed, another cool flower, and fantastic in arrangement. So thank you so much if you have subscribed to my channel, because last week we managed to reach 4,000 subscribers, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for helping my YouTube channel to grow, and it's really exciting that you would like to follow me along on my flower growing journey. If you haven't subscribed already, please do hit the like and subscribe button and see if we can reach that magic 5,000 number. See you next week.